The North Florida TPO is committed to shaping our transportation future. We're focused on planning, funding, clean fuels, and new technologies for a vibrant, connected community. Learn more at northfloridatpo.com.
This is WJCT News 89.9 Jacksonville. Up next, national and local news from NPR and the WJCT News team.
NPR News in Washington, I'm Corva Coleman. Israel's military says it will start a broad operation targeting crossings in southern Lebanon. NPR's Hadil Al-Shalchi reports from Beirut. The announcement today came with new evacuation orders for people still in South Lebanon.
While this isn't the first time the Israeli military targets bridges in South Lebanon, it now says it will widen attacks and strike many crossings on the Litani River. The Litani River is considered a buffer zone line in the conflict. In a statement posted on social media, the Israeli military said the Iran-backed militant group Hezbollah uses the crossings to transfer weapons. The Israeli military began a ground incursion in South Lebanon this week, and troops moved deeper into the country. The Israeli defense minister said those evacuated south of the Litani River will not be allowed to return to their homes until, quote, the safety of northern Israeli residents is guaranteed. Hadil Al-Shalchi, NPR News, Beirut.
President Trump's nominee for Homeland Security Secretary will appear before a Senate panel today for his confirmation hearing. NPR's Jimena Bustillo reports on Oklahoma Republican Senator Mark Wayne Mullen, who would succeed former DHS Secretary Kristi Noem if confirmed.
The shakeup in leadership comes after a tumultuous few months at DHS. An immigration enforcement surge in Minnesota resulted in protests and the deaths of 2 U.S. citizens. Then lawmakers failed to pass a budget to fund the agency, resulting in a shutdown. Mark Wayne Mullen has spent over a decade on Capitol Hill. He was first elected to the House in 2012 and then the Senate in 2022. He does not have a background in immigration policy, but has been a vocal supporter of the president and his goal of mass deportations. Jimena Bustillo, NPR News, Washington.
A federal judge has ordered more than 1,000 full-time Voice of America employees who were placed on administrative leave to be returned to work by Monday. As NPR's David Folkenflik reports, the judge ruled that Trump administration official Kari Lake ignored the will of Congress as she sought to dismantle the VOA network.
Until last year, the Voice of America broadcast in 49 language services across the globe. It's now down to just 6. It seeks to offer fair news coverage in lands without a free press and to model what a pluralistic society looks like by incorporating debate and dissent. Last March, President Trump issued an order calling for the network to be reduced to the smallest size allowed by law. He called VOA propaganda. U.S. Judge Royce Lamberth had already ruled that Lake had illegally assumed the powers of the CEO of the network's parent agency. Now Lamberth is finding that Lake also acted unlawfully by ignoring Congress's annual funding for Voice of America and by failing to analyze what her actions might do. Lake has not responded to NPR's request for comment. David Folkenflik, NPR News.
On Wall Street in pre-market trading, Dow futures are down by 260 points. This is NPR.
This is WJCT News 89.9 in Jacksonville. Good morning. I'm Michelle Coram. St. Augustine's popular Sing Out Loud Festival in September is going to look a little different this year. Organizers chose September for Sing Out Loud 10 years ago because it's typically a slow month for local tourism. But the 2026 Music Fest is skipping its marquee multi-day event on Francis Field in preparation for moving from September to May the following year. Diana Markovitz is with the SJC Cultural Events, the nonprofit that organizes the festival, and she says the move to May is all about safety.
To hold such a large-scale multi-day event on Francis Field in downtown St. Augustine during peak hurricane season is just becoming too risky.
This September, Sing Out Loud will still showcase more than 100 local performances around the city, and organizers are hopeful that people will come to town to support the homegrown talent. The 2025 event brought an estimated $9 million of economic impact to the area. The city of Jacksonville is hosting an outreach event today, a tri-base job fair set from 9 to 2 at UNF's Herbert University Center on Alumni Drive. Officials from area bases will help retiring or retired service members check out civilian job possibilities. The weather forecast for today calling for a nice afternoon is starting a bit chilly. We'll get to 62 this afternoon, breezy from the northeast. And tonight, a low of 44 degrees, back to the upper 60s on Thursday.
This is NPR.
Support for NPR comes from NPR stations. Other contributors include Luminescence Foundation. Luminescence Foundation is dedicated to shedding light on neurological research focused on Alzheimer's and Parkinson's diseases and supporting land conservation initiatives. This is NPR.
Support for First Coast Connect is provided in part by Baptist Health and North Florida TPO.
When does do more with less reach a breaking point? Welcome to First Coast Connect. I'm Ann Schindler. And it's a question a lot of nonprofits are asking as funds continue to shrink and demand grows. We're talking about that today. Later in the program, it's March Madness for the JU Dolphins. We ask the team's graduate student guard and Atlantic Sun Conference Player of the Year how she's preparing for the team's first game. But first, nonprofits are one of the most trusted sectors of American society, more than the military, private foundations, even members of one's local community. But the future of U.S. nonprofits has never been less certain. Here to talk about the challenges, we're joined by Leah Donelan McDermott. She's program director at the Florida Nonprofit Alliance, and she joins us via video. Leah, good morning.
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for being here. We're also joined in studio by Dawn Lockhart, CEO of the Nonprofit Center of Northeast Florida. Dawn, thanks for being here.
My pleasure. Thank you.
So we asked at the top, doing more with less, when that reaches a breaking point. How close do you feel the overall nonprofit sector is to that breaking point?
The nonprofit sector has always done more with less. This is kind of a norm for the sector and how we operate, and that's part of the problem. When you continue to push the bubble under the rug for the length of time that we've done, it really started in the pre-pandemic era. Nonprofits were doing and delivering more services than they actually could afford, and of course, with 2025 happening, I've shared this data before, but in Duval County, we either lost or were paused $550 million in federal funding. That is a significant hit to the ecosystem of the sector. So we're really having to pull back and think differently about what does it look like for the sector to thrive and to ensure that we're continuing to deliver services. So it's a tough time.
And is that just the way that nonprofits are structured or conditioned to think? That because they're mission driven, because very often they're dealing with sectors of society that might be underserved or underprivileged in some fashion, that they're just sort of adopting all of that need and sort of making do, as opposed to making structural changes that might impact their services or impact their reach?
Both and. The thing that we have to remember is that the nonprofit sector, it's just a tax status. We are a business just like every other business in the community. In fact, in North Florida, we're the third largest industry. We have over 78,000 employees, so we contribute significantly to the economy and well-being of our community. So it's really important, especially at the level of boards of directors who are really the stewards of the mission, that they start to really focus on understanding that as a business in this community, we need to have the talent, the infrastructure, the resources, the capacity to be able to deliver the services to meet the needs of the community. On the flip side, nonprofit organizations need to think very seriously about the capacity that they have to deliver services. And I use this phrase often. When you have funding to serve 10 people and the 11th person comes to the door, you really have to think very seriously about whether or not you can continue to deliver the services for the 11th individual, and instead focus on how you can deepen your impact with the 10 individuals that you have the funding for.
Those are tough choices. Leah, the Florida Nonprofit Alliance does a lot of surveying of the community to collect data about the challenges that nonprofits are facing. This is the 5th year of this collection that you've found funding has been the top challenge. Almost half of the people that you include in your survey or who respond to your survey said that funding is their main challenge. What other challenges are they facing?
So the interesting thing about this year is that we're seeing a resurgence in some of the challenges that really haven't been as much of an issue since the height of the pandemic. So things like mental health of board members, volunteers, and staff members, that's more of a concern now. People feeling burnt out, people feeling effects on their mental health of being able to do this really hard work within the communities. We also know that nonprofits, as Dawn pointed out, we are businesses. And so things like increased costs hit us just as hard as they do any other industry. But people don't always think about that, right? When they're donating their money, when they're donating their time, they don't necessarily associate things like having to pay more for their normal resources they use to run their programs. So we're very concerned about making sure people are aware of that, making sure that people are willing to give unrestricted donations to nonprofits to help them run their organizations in the best way possible, and continue to support the human resources that allow us to provide those programs and services for every member of our community.
I think a lot of us have gotten accustomed to going to, say, a restaurant, and it's like, wow, this is literally twice what it used to cost to have this same lunch or whatever it is. And at the same time, when it comes to donations to nonprofits, people tend to get pretty fixed into their annual giving or set amount that they have in their head as to what is an appropriate amount to give. And people are facing their own financial challenges, obviously. How difficult is it to get somebody that's even a committed donor on an annual basis to realize that your costs, just like the cost of coffee and a hamburger, have gone up in some cases by twice as much?
Yeah, absolutely. And we did see that reflected in the survey. Nonprofits mentioned things like increased tariffs affecting the work that they're able to do. Yes, the increased cost of buying supplies, the increased cost of hiring people, right, and keeping them employed, because all of those people that work for nonprofits are experiencing increased costs in their lives. And so we really do want to, first of all, say thank you to all of those in the community that generously support nonprofits, whether that be through their time, their dollars, or their other treasures that they have they can give to organizations, but also encourage them to really remember that costs have gone up. So we appreciate anything that people are willing to give, but if you are able to give more, that's always great. Also to lean into trusting the organizations that you love and support, right? Thinking about unrestricted gifts, so not restricting it to only one specific purpose, but allowing the nonprofit to be more flexible and responsive to the needs of the community by having unrestricted dollars. Thinking about how to support them on an ongoing basis. So multi-year funding, letting them know that you're going to be there for the long term helps them plan better and account for things like increased costs or unexpected changes that might affect them.
If you're just joining us, we're talking about the future of nonprofits. If you work for one or if you've ever been helped by a local nonprofit, we would love to hear your story. You can give us a call on air at 904-549-2937, or you can go to firstcoastconnect.org and find other ways that you can connect with us. Dawn, in terms of the precarity of nonprofits, I was surprised by some of the numbers that show, many nonprofits don't have a cash flow to meet their needs. Many don't have funding beyond their current year. And so the financial precarity is real, but you have also created a new strategic plan at the Nonprofit Center that looks at perhaps urging or facilitating a change in the way that nonprofits approach their work. And that could include perhaps partnering with another nonprofit or merging with another nonprofit in order to maximize the money that they do have. I would imagine that's a tough sell for a lot of nonprofits that have deep roots and singular identities.
Yes, it has been an interesting journey to lift up those opportunities, but I have to tell you, Anne, I am so incredibly proud of this community and this sector for really embracing the opportunity. We've worked really hard to socialize that what we call sustained collaboration, which is about 8 different ways that nonprofit organizations can partner with another organization. They've really embraced it. Again, going back to the fact that a nonprofit organization, it's just a tax status. And so in the private sector, mergers is considered to be a very positive, aspirational, growth-minded approach to developing the business and sustaining it. And so we're really taking those private sector models and thinking about how we can adapt those to help the sector become more sustainable, and really starting at the top, working with boards of directors and helping them understand how to leverage those initiatives and those opportunities so that they can ensure that their mission is sustainable over the organization. And so intently, we use that phrase often. Mission sustainability over organization sustainability feels very overwhelming for boards to think about. But in reality, in the example of a nonprofit CEO retiring, it's a perfect opportunity for a nonprofit organization to think about before we move forward with hiring an interim, before we move forward with hiring another executive director. Is there an opportunity for us as an organization to determine if there is another organization we might be able to partner with? There may not be, and that's perfectly fine, but it's important to have the conversation.
I want to ask you about that CEO transition because our next guests, we have guests from the Women's
Sure.
Center. They're undergoing a CEO transition. We're going to be meeting the new CEO and talking to the outgoing CEO. This organization that I work for is undergoing a CEO
Yes.
transition. What is the trend? Surprised me that there is currently underway.
Yeah.
As much as a third of nonprofits are expecting a CEO transition. Why is that happening?
Well, think about just the tenure of CEOs who have been in the industry and the social sector for a very long time. They're knocking on the door of their own retirement and preparing for that. And so as a sector, we need to really think about how are we building the talent pipeline? How are we attracting individuals who want to go into the sector? First and foremost, needing to make sure that our salary and compensations are fair and equitable, all the things that are important to attracting that future talent pipeline to be able to lead the sector in what is a very complex environment right
I
now.
imagine that creates all kinds of uncertainty for donors and other kinds of things. We have a question that I want to direct at you, Leah, on Facebook from Susan asking if our guests, if people who are working for nonprofits, if you are removing the words diversity, equity, and inclusion from your documents because of anti-DEI legislation. That's obviously something when it comes to grants or funding from the government has been of particular concern now at the federal level, but at the state level for a few years. There are a lot of agencies, not just nonprofits, that are trying to scrub that language from their foundational documents, from their grant applications. Is that something that you're seeing a lot of?
Yes, we are. I mean, we always make sure, and part of our work at the Nonprofit Alliance is to make sure that people are in legal compliance. So we, of course, always want to make sure nonprofits are following the law, the federal and state laws and local laws that exist. But yes, that can be a really tough conversation for a lot of nonprofits that hold this work very dear to their mission and what they've been doing for the life of their organization. And so what we're also telling organizations is that follow the law, right? Make sure that you're in compliance. But also make sure that you're having conversations internally with your boards of directors, with your staff leadership, with your volunteers, for them to understand what does that actually mean for your organization, and how do we make sure our mission work is able to be accomplished without violating any of the laws that regulate nonprofit work. So it's tough conversations. Sometimes it's a shift in language. Sometimes it's a shift in how services are delivered. But of course, they're also beholden to their mission, and we want to make sure that they feel supported and able to do the work that they've been created to do.
Sure. And there's some nonprofits whose mission is diversity, equity, and inclusion, and makes it, I imagine, all the more difficult. We have a call from John on the South Side. Good morning, John. Go ahead.
Hi, good morning. Thank you for the conversation. I'm just, concerned, like has been mentioned several times, nonprofits are a business sector. And we've seen regarding the public sector and city council, we have Rory Diamond, Nick Howland were associated with Canines for Warriors. Carico is VP of the Boys and Girls Club. And it seems like there's a lot of feathering of nest involved. Is there an effort besides trying to shore up? Is there an effort amongst the nonprofit organizations, umbrella groups, some effort to kind of make sure that things are being done in some sort of an ethical approach rather than just seeming influence peddling? And I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
Thanks, John. It's a good question. We should also mention Councilmember Jacoby Pittman is working with the Clara White Mission, and so also another nonprofit represented by a city council member. Dawn, what do you hear about concerns on that front, about the porosity perhaps between public roles and roles on nonprofits, about contracts that some nonprofits get? There's been controversy in past years about perhaps not competitive monies going to these nonprofits. Tell us what you hear about that and what you communicate to the outside world about that.
So it's really important to remember that every nonprofit organization is governed by a board of directors. And those boards of directors are beholden to ensure that the organization is following the law, is following and supporting the mission that they have been entrusted to support, that they are in compliance with all of the grants that they're receiving, and that they're following the intent of the donors that are contributing to the organization. That said, every nonprofit organization is an independent 501c3 organization, and so making the assumption that boards of directors are following and modeling the ethics and best practices of those organizations. Every organization has the capacity to operate independently.
And some of the recommendations I know that you have made and are making have to do with improving perhaps training or accountability of board members. I don't think a lot of people who are outside the nonprofit world really even understand that function, that dynamic of a board. It can be very difficult for a CEO to deal with a board. Boards can be challenging.
Yes.
Boards can be have their own special pet projects that they're interested in. How do you ensure that you've got a good board on your nonprofit? Who drives that train?
So there's a tremendous amount of available training. Both the Nonprofit Center for Northeast Florida and Florida Nonprofit Alliance both provide state and local training for good governance. Good governance is really the driver of success for a nonprofit organization. There are, as Leah said, there are very specific laws that nonprofit organizations must follow, and it is up to the board of directors to ensure that the nonprofit itself is following that. One of the things that we recommend, just like the nonprofits have a finance committee and they have the completion of a financial audit, F&A provides a governance checklist to make sure that the organization is in compliance with all of the laws that are required for a nonprofit organization. And so we always recommend that the governance committee itself incorporates that into their charter, and that they are checking annually the compliance of those items, just like the finance committee is reviewing the audit.
Leah, there have been so many changes and challenges. Funding is obviously a big one, but data protection, compliance, as Dawn says, with laws and regulations that are evolving all the time, tax compliance, things like that. What is the issue that keeps you up at night?
Oh, that's such a good question. I think there's a couple different answers to that. I think one of the most urgent things that's starting to keep me up at night as we approach hurricane season is the fact that 40% of nonprofits in our state don't have a disaster plan. And that is obviously very important. I think especially Northeast Florida, we've been very fortunate to not have a direct hit in a very long time. But a lot of us remember the effects of Matthew and other storms that have really affected us. So it's really important that nonprofits think about not only what they would do internally when a storm hits, but also what their clients, constituents, and communities need. And the best way to do that is to create a disaster plan. So if you don't have one and you're a nonprofit organization, I hope that will be something that you look at over the next couple of months. I also think that it's really important for nonprofits to think about how they support the people at their organizations. You know, the work that we do can't happen unless we have volunteers and unless we have staff, and that includes board members. So who are those people? How are they feeling? And how do we support them in their well-being and in their wellness journey to make sure that they're able to continue to provide these really vital services for our communities? I think we have to stop and take a look at what that looks like and what our people need.
There are some nonprofits that deal a lot more on the disaster front, Leah, and that includes, whether it's people like at the Red Cross or various agencies that come in after a storm or perhaps after a wildfire. And so their mental health is an issue. But we haven't really talked about arts nonprofits. Can you talk about how they come into this equation and the perhaps different or similar sets of challenges that they face in the current environment?
Absolutely. We saw 2 years ago at the state level, the governor kind of come in at what I would consider to be kind of the last minute and veto all arts funding in the state, all state funded arts programs. That was, I think, a big surprise and a huge challenge and obstacle for those organizations to overcome who weren't expecting that to happen after getting support from the legislature. So I think arts organizations always have a little bit of an uphill battle. It's easy to, from the outside, assume that those are just nice to have, that, they're not vital services to a community. We know that's not the case, right? We have arts organizations that are providing education, that are providing well-being, that are driving the economic success and tourism of our communities. And so arts organizations, I think, have an extra burden to really help communicate that well for people to truly understand the value they're bringing to the community. And also the sort of now experience and maybe precedent setting of the ability to cut arts funding, which, public funding can't completely be covered by private philanthropy if it's completely taken out of the state, federal, or local government. So we really have to think about what kind of community do we want? How do we provide the quality of life for the people in our community? And how do the arts organizations contribute to that? I know Northeast Florida has so many wonderful, really strong organizations, from the very big ones that you probably can think about off the top of your head to the very small ones that are doing work in neighborhoods or communities or with certain populations. And so I hope everyone does remember them and really understand how they drive the mental, physical, and economic health of our communities.
Dawn, just briefly, at a time when people are feeling, under a tight budget themselves, we do know that volunteering can be rewarding for people who are feeling at loose ends or perhaps unsatisfied with, the current climate for one reason or another. What should people who may not have the money but might have some interest in volunteering, what would you ask of them?
Volunteerism is really a critical component of all nonprofit organizations. And we had a decline in volunteerism pre-pandemic, and really asking the community to come back and really examine the opportunities, the incredible nonprofit organizations in our community. It's just an incredible mosaic of opportunities.
How do they do that?
So most nonprofit organizations have a volunteer strategy, whether it's to serve on the board or to deliver meals or to provide back office support. We're very happy at the Nonprofit Center. We have a board bank, a job bank, and we also have a lot of nonprofit organizations who reach out to us to ask for volunteer opportunities. I know United Way of Northeast Florida also has a volunteer bank. So there's no shortage of opportunities. It's just really important to bring volunteerism back to our community in order to be able to supplement the loss that we've gained.
Well, it is an important conversation. Dawn Lockhart, Leah, Donelan, McDermott, thank you both so much for being here. Thanks for the work that you do.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you so much.
Up next, passing the torch, we meet the new and former leader of the Jacksonville Women's Center. Welcome back. After a decade at the helm of the Women's Center of Jacksonville, Teresa Miles is leaving the top job to devote more time to the health needs of her family. She's passing the torch to longtime City Year Jacksonville leader Allishia Bauman, and we're joined by both of them now. Good morning. Thanks for being here.
Good morning. Thanks for having us.
Thank you, Ann.
So, Teresa, you announced in September your plans to retire. I'm sure it is a bittersweet feeling. You've talked to me in the past, though, about how things have changed since the early days of the Women's Center. And I think it's worthwhile for people to reflect on that, where we were versus where we are. What was it like back when, even before your tenure?
Yeah. 30 years ago, if you think about it, there was really no centralized place for women in crisis. Like if I had to find daycare or I was scared and I was pregnant, no one knew where to go. And I think that's the beauty of how the Women's Center started, is they literally started with a plug-in wall or plug-in phone in a wall and with volunteers, and they grew from there. And they grew based on what the gaps were in community. It really was about how do we fill a gap that's not being met, that's needed by women in particular. So as the organization evolved, they started looking at the resources that weren't available. And that's one of the things that we still do to some degree today. And, when I even interviewed for the job over 10 years ago, the board had a real clear vision about what the organization and the community needed. And it was, we want to become a long-term sustainable organization. So we've worked from a grassroots perspective for a long time. And the other one was, we've got to do better by survivors. We need to have a standalone sexual assault forensic exam center in this community, because as a community, we have not done well by sexual assault survivors.
There was a time when it was just a trailer in a parking lot.
Absolutely. They called it the rape trailer. Prior to that, it was the morgue.
Yeah.
There was a time when people had to go to the morgue. And the mindset was, who knows better about forensics than the medical examiner, but it wasn't a trauma-informed mindset. So, if you look at the history, we've definitely progressed along the way. And I'm excited to see where we go from here.
And the center that you have now, this home that is a place for people who are going for forensics exams, you really have provided so many comforts there as you can, given the fact that you're doing a clinical and often investigative procedure. Yeah. Can you talk just a little bit about some of the things that were important to you to bring in terms of providing a way for women who are or men who've been through a traumatic experience like that?
Yeah, one of the things that I feel very proud about is that we had the voice of survivors in that room at all times as we created that place. And, we looked at little things like, of course, it's a medical function to do a forensic exam, but there's no reason that we couldn't at least make it comfortable. If you go into the shower area, there's in a high-end hotel where you have the clear part above so you can see out of the shower. We want to be able to give that opportunity for survivors to start regaining their control. So they go into the bathroom, they feel like they know everything that's going on in that room. We move the bathrooms literally from across the hallway into the exam rooms so that when we take their clothes for evidence, they don't have to wear a gown and go to the restroom. We've got it right there. We put out a call for artwork, for healing artwork from our community, and they stepped up. The walls are beautiful with healing artwork. So for us, it really became a matter of everything from the softness of the floor to the colors of the walls to how we can do kind of form and function of a forensic exam and make that as comfortable as possible, knowing it'll never be comfortable. But what can we do to make it better?
And clothes for women or men to leave in so that they have something to wear.
Absolutely. And, we often see homeless individuals, so we provide them with backpacks with hygiene items and things that they may need if they're not able to be homed at that moment when they leave us.
Allishia, this is a big job and a big role to step into. But as we mentioned, you've been at City Year for a long time. Your background is in charitable organizations. You often talk about coming to this because of the help that you received as a very young person from the community. Are you comfortable telling us a little bit about that?
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I am because I am who I am because of this community. I grew up here. I'm a product of public education, and I serve because of those who supported me. I was forced out of my home at a young age, and there were countless community members who saw me and took me in.
This was just as a teenager.
As a teenager, yep. And, I thought initially that's why I'm serving youth and education, right? And as I have, progressed in my career, I've realized really in my most vulnerable moments in my life there were people who stepped in when they didn't have to for me, right? And that's the work I'm doing, and that can show up in many ways. And it was a really divine, like, universe moment that said, like, Women's Center. I loved City Year. I still do. I will forever, right? But the work of the Women's Center is so beautiful. And I said to the staff after my first week, when I walk into the office, I feel like I'm healing more and more, because that's what's happening. Our counselors are literally doing that with clients every day, healing work. And I told them the other day, I feel like the sessions, like the counseling sessions, must be radiating to me in my office or something. But yeah, there's a concept that I love called Ubuntu. I don't know if you've heard of this. It's an African proverb that means I am because you are, my humanity is tied to yours. And that is a deep value of mine. It's why I cared about the work I did at City Year and why I care about the work I do here.
And so what do you plan as you come in? Do you look at this as an opportunity for big changes? Are you coming in and talking about stability? Obviously, we were just talking about tumultuous times in the nonprofit world. What's your agenda?
Well, it's so funny. I was just talking about this with Dawn, and I am in week 3.
Okay, all right.
And I was reflecting with a friend, like, people ask you, even before I started, what's your vision? What are your plans? If you do it right, you learn first, right? Some greatest mentors in my life said, Allishia, seek first to understand. And so I have the board actually pushed me and Teresa to really think about, like, what's the first initial months of your learning. And what's beautiful is Teresa and I, first of all, Teresa and the board, Shirley Webb, Sharon Simmons, all of the people over the last 30 years have built a beautiful foundation at the Women's Center. And we're overlapping. And so that I get this learning support. And so I want to learn what's been really great over the last 30 years and, like, leave it alone, right? And then where do we have opportunity to evolve? I told the team, I'm not someone that's going to come in and, like, rip things apart. But we're at a bit of a tipping point in a good way to really figure out how can we evolve and, like, deepen our impact. And that's what I want to learn and understand. So I'm meeting with all 40 staff members. Every single one of them. I'm sitting in every meeting that exists. I'm going to visit the Safe Center. I'm going to be there all day today, and I'm talking to our medical director. I'm going out in community and, like, learning. And I think that's going to give me a robust understanding of, like, the path forward.
And so when you say, like, a deeper impact or in the community, what might that look like? What is the need out there that still exists that you think is perhaps unmet?
Yeah, well, I think, Teresa and I talk about this a lot. One thing is ensuring that women in community are aware of what we do and feel comfortable coming to us for support. So what I've learned over the last couple of weeks is that those numbers of folks showing up, to the Safe Center are lower, and we could make assumptions that maybe the comfort level isn't there, or maybe there's not an awareness of what this is and the nuances that exist. And so I'm really excited, first and foremost, to, in a really thoughtful, intentional way, which Teresa and I have talked a lot about, to be careful with the work that we do. There's a reverence in that, but there's also this level of awareness that I want to generate and help people understand what I am understanding. Day 2, I was like, whoa, had no idea.
What surprised you?
Well, I'll just say this is going to sound small, but it's not. But I was walking around the office, and we have a beautiful clothing closet that has clothing, basic needs, the Bosom Buddies program. There are wigs for women. It's incredible. So if clients come in, we have those things available to support them. I had no idea until I walked around and saw that. And I imagine people who need that type of support don't either. And there are, it's not just one type of person that we serve at the Women's Center, right? There's such a diverse array of community members that we serve, and I want more people to know that.
Yeah. You talked, Teresa, about the roots of the Women's Center and coalescing around needs that were as varied as childcare or whatever. I think of the Women's Center primarily as a rape crisis center. What needs does it serve? I mean, it's such a broad mandate, the name of it, the Women's Center, but how has the mission evolved? What does it encompass at this point for women?
I think one of the areas of growth that we've seen in the last 10 years has been in the area of really stress management and resiliency for women. So one of the, we have our mental health work, and that goes deep. We have the most amazingly talented therapists. But a lot of times, particularly for women who have suffered a sexual assault, they're not ready to go deep. That takes time. Healing, it's such a very, varying path. And a lot of times they just need to be able to put their feet on the floor, get their kids to school, and go to work. And they don't have time to dig deep because they know what that means. So, and it's not just sexual violence. We see women with all types of trauma in their lives, divorce, grief, all types of things. And sometimes it's just, tell me how to do it. Tell me how to get through this moment in time so that I can focus on my family. And so we offer that. We offer a community resiliency model that really does help incorporate all of the skills that you need to breathe right, to walk right, to talk right, to get you to the next moment so you can survive this one. And it's very focused on trauma and how to get past that.
And so who in the community do you think is listening now that would benefit if they haven't been a victim of sexual assault? Right. What kinds of services would you offer someone?
Yeah, well, if we're looking at just women in general, we look at, like I said, the divorce, the grief of losing a family member, the stress of losing a job, the economy itself. We have women truly struggling out there. So all of those types, but also other nonprofits, because we will go in and provide this training to them at no cost so that they can strengthen their model of care for the people that they serve, not just the women. We have a beautiful partnership with the Literacy Alliance where we go in and we provide training and support to their staff so that they can in turn support their students and the clients that come to them. So we really don't want to, save this model for ourselves. So other nonprofits we would love to partner with on getting this model in community as well.
Allishia, in talking about the future of nonprofits, as we were just a moment ago, one of the suggestions is perhaps merging. How do you see the Women's Center identity going forward? Do you feel that this is an entity that, aside from partnerships like Teresa mentioned, would remain unto itself? And tell us a little bit about what your board is asking for. What did they want to see?
Yeah, I in week 3, I'm asking a lot of those questions too. It's funny because I was on a CEO panel last night, and all the questions they were asking me was like, I'm asking those questions too. I think the Women's Center has a really beautiful foundation that over the last 30 years that I'm excited to deepen and understand. And I think just like every nonprofit leader is thinking about, what does revenue diversification look like, and what does that sustainability look and feel like? So those are all things that I'm considering as we move forward.
Teresa, maybe the last time that we talked to you in the context of the Women's Center, how are you going to leave this position?
Sadly, it's been an amazing journey, and it is very hard to leave something that you love. It's not hard to go to something that you love. So I feel that I have had such benefit to be a part of this organization for this many years, and to be able to go home and change my purpose. And I just have to give a lot of kudos to our board and our leadership team to allow Allishia and I this time to transition and to be so respectful of myself and my family during probably one of the most difficult times in our lives. It's been quite a journey, and I think that I'm just so excited for Allishia and to see what happens with the Women's Center. I think she will elevate it. She may not know exactly at week 3, but I have all kinds of thoughts about what amazing things she's going to do. She's going to elevate this organization. I know that. And I was even involved in the interview process. And I joke about texting my board president saying, "This is your new CEO, hire her." And it wasn't my choice, but they allowed me to be a part of that.
This is the one.
This is the one. And that's unusual. And I'm thrilled that we were able to do that and to bring Allishia on board.
Well, Teresa, wish you the best of luck in your challenges ahead.
Thank you, Anne. I appreciate that very much.
And Allishia Bauman, I'm sure we'll be seeing you again soon. Good luck in the coming weeks and months.
Thank you.
All right. Up next, a historic season for the JU Dolphins. We talk to the team's head coach and star player ahead of their Friday NCAA matchup. Welcome back. Well, the Jacksonville University Dolphins are going to the big dance for the first time in a decade. It's just the second time the women's basketball team has secured a March Madness bid. Here to talk with us ahead of the Friday game is JU graduate student and Atlantic Sun Conference Player of the Year, Priscilla Williams. Welcome.
Thank you.
And congratulations.
Thank you so much.
We're also joined by the team's head coach, Special Jennings. Good morning, Special.
Good morning. How you doing?
I'm great. And we're also joined by the school's senior vice president and athletic director, Alex Ricker-Gilbert. Alex, thanks for being here.
Good morning. Thanks for having us.
So, Priscilla, you were named Player of the Year, and this was in an overtime game against Austin Peay State University. What was that win like for you and your teammates? It must have been incredibly exciting to do it here in the ViStar Arena before a big crowd of locals.
It was unsurreal, for real. I'm sure you guys seen me. I was really emotional after the game. I feel like just all our hard work that we did over the summer, throughout the whole year, we've been through ups and downs. So just kind of seeing it all, kind of come together, and then we got a championship. So we hit our end goal. So it was just, I'm super proud of our whole team.
Your stats personally are pretty extraordinary. I mean, aside from the performance of the team, you finished second scoring in the league. You averaged more than 15 points per game. Mm-hmm. You tied for the lead in the league when it comes to rebounds, more than 8 a game, and you ranked top 20 in assists, steals, and blocks. You had 10 double-doubles, and you led the league in that this season. So you are a pretty versatile, all-around player, and obviously your team leans on you a lot. How do you kind of coalesce your leadership and also just your membership in that squad?
Well, my teammates, shout out to them, shout out to my coaches. They kind of, make me really confident and be able to be the player I am. I don't get any of my awards without them. So, I don't know. It's not much I can really say. I mean, they gave me confidence through the roof. Coach Special, and just everyone has really kind of brought my confidence back in the game. On and off the court and just as a person. So, I'm just super thankful.
Coach, this is just your third year as a head coach at JU. This is the first time the JU's women's basketball team has won this ASUN, the conference league championship. So you're headed now to Baton Rouge.
Yes.
It's a big game, not on your home turf. What are you preparing your team for?
I mean, we haven't played at home a ton this season. And so we've gotten we've adapted to playing on the road, right? Baton Rouge is different. LSU is a different place. I was fortunate enough to have the opportunity to take a team there my first season here, and we played in that environment. And so it's going to be fun, right? The ladies, they adapt very well to big environments. And so I look forward to seeing, how we come out and perform, but excited to get to Baton Rouge and see what's going on.
Alex, just briefly before we go to break, how is the school feeling right now, enthusiasm-wise?
It's been unbelievable for the university and for North Florida. The university, there's nothing more for our university that can elevate the brand of Jacksonville University and Northeast Florida more than a basketball championship. And so the school has really gotten behind, the region has really gotten behind our women, our coaching staff, and it's been fun to see. And we're excited to take our talents to Baton Rouge and take on LSU.
We're going to take a short break. We'll be back. We're talking to JU Dolphins coach, player, and AD, and we'll be back in just right after the break.
The Cummer Museum of Art and Gardens presents Art in Bloom, uniting nature and creativity with flowers made of glass, ceramics, paper, wood, and even Lego. On display through September 13th. More information available at cummermuseum.org. Terrell Hogan Law.
I'm Wayne Hogan. Accidents can happen when you least expect it. For decades, our attorneys have dug out the facts to help juries decide who's at fault.
More at terrellhoganlaw.com.
Tickets.
On the next Fresh Air, how to get ahead in business when you're a young woman in sexist World War II London, trying to survive the Blitz while navigating romance and fighting time-traveling fascists. That's the premise of our guest Francis Spufford's new novel, None Such. His novel, Cahokia Jazz, made our book critic Maureen Corrigan's list of the best books of 2024. Join us.
Today at noon on WJCT News 89.9.
Big changes are coming to the Federal Emergency Management Agency. With Kristi Noem out, all eyes are on FEMA to roll out millions of dollars in stalled federal funding for disaster response, especially in North Carolina, where the western part of the state is still grappling with the effects of Hurricane Helene. The future of FEMA, next time on 1A.
Today, starting at 10 on WJCT News 89.9.
Welcome back. If you're just joining us, we're talking to JU women's basketball coach Special Jennings, AD Alex Ricker-Gilbert, and Dolphins grad student guard Priscilla Williams. Alex, we were talking to you right before the break about how this broadcasts for the university. A lot of people who think of JU often think of the 1970 team that went to the championships in the Final Four and only lost to UCLA, but an extraordinary team and some of those folks still around like Artis Gilmore. How do current students, current faculty, even the current team think about that legacy? Is that ancient history or is that something that's sort of top of mind?
I think it's also a good connection point to right now, right? That run in 1970 is such a big part of our history, and basketball is such a big part of our history. And so connecting that championship run with this championship run, Artis Gilmore was at all of our games during the ASUN tournament. He was at a lot of the games during the regular season. He broadcasts our game. And so he knows our ladies. He speaks with our ladies. He greets Special after each game. And so it's been really cool to see that connection from 1970 to 2026. And the thing they have in common, championship caliber teams.
Yeah. And so fun. I mean, that team, Special, you look back at some of those pictures of artists and the whole Mod Squad thing and, you know, their style. And what do you take from that legacy that you're a part of now?
Looking at the pictures, I will say we brought the shorts back, right? We're wearing the shorts again. And so, like Alex said, you know, it's an amazing feeling when you are supported, right? Artis Gilmore, like he said, he's at a lot of our games. You know, he speaks to me, talks to me, comes up to me. You know, I can ask him pretty much anything. You know, he's excited about the ladies and for the ladies. And so it's just an amazing feeling when you can walk into a gym and see the person who, you know, name could be on it, sitting there watching you and celebrating you. And so that in itself is amazing.
Priscilla, we mentioned that you are the player of the year. But your teammate, Tatum Brown, is also named a conference freshman of the year. She's a guard. And some of your players also had some double records, Kamari Mitchell and Carmia Brown. So what is it? are you guys competitive within yourselves when you are ranking up these titles and these accolades?
For sure. I think we all push each other to be our best. I remember me and Tatum had a conversation in the beginning of the year, and Coach Special had told us, she was like, you guys do what you need to do. You could easily be freshman of the year and player of the year. And I know that was one of her big goals, and that was one of my big goals.
Wow.
Once accomplished. So, and even our team group chat, people don't know, before the summer is called ASUN Champs. That's what we named it, kind of before everything happened. So I feel
just
like
put it out there in the universe.
For sure, we said
make
that's
it so.
something that we wanted to do, and if we all came together, we could do that. So I think with all the titles that we got, like I said, we can't get them with our teammates, so they put us in position. I mean, you know, she's a really good freshman. She's really poised. She's going to have a great career, and then also she's a point guard. I mean, you know, our coach was one of the best point guards, so pretty good path to follow. So yeah.
Yeah, and you come from a program that had a lot of all-stars in it. You know, in your you were an All-American and the number 9 overall prospect in the class of 2020. That's a class that included Caitlin Clark and Angel Reese. What is next for you? What do you see beyond? I mean, you're a graduate student now.
Right. Yes, ma'am. Well, obviously, I'm trying to go to the league. If not, I'm looking to play overseas. So, you know, I'm trying to go as far as basketball can take me. And yeah.
Yeah. And Special, where do you think she's headed?
Wherever she wants, right? I say this all the time. Priscilla, you know, the only way Priscilla doesn't succeed is because she doesn't want to. The young lady has all the utilities to be a pro. You know, she's been at every level in college. She's seen different locker rooms, and she's heard from different coaches, and you know, so she's pretty well rounded, and so she's a unicorn from a playing standpoint. 6'4", can do everything, and so you know, every coach wants that, right? I'm happy that I have it, so that I don't have to prepare for it on a nightly basis, and so you know, she's just a stand-up young woman too. You know, outside of basketball, right? We bump heads the most on the court, I like literally. But off the court, you know, she's sweet as pie. She's a chameleon. You can put her in any room. You know, she loves children. You know, she's just an incredible young woman, and I'm proud of her.
Alex, this is a 15-seed team. They are taking on the number 2 LSU Tigers. And this is a Friday night game, 6 p.m., Baton Rouge. What should local people be doing to support this team? What would you ask of the community?
I'd ask the community to watch it. ESPN, 6 o'clock Eastern. And we've had great support throughout the season. What Coach has done and her team has done to build up our program in just really 2.5 short years has been remarkable. And at ViStar in the championship games, we had thousands of people there. So if you can't make it to the game, watch the game. If you can get to Baton Rouge, I hear there's good food in Baton Rouge, so they can enjoy their time in Baton Rouge and go to the game and cheer on our ladies. But if you're in Jacksonville, if you're staying in Jacksonville, go to the bar, go out with your friends, stay at home, watch us on ESPN at 6 o'clock.
All right. Well, we wish you all the best. I'm sure it'll be a great game, and get out there and win it. We'll be excited to see.
Thank you
all
so
right.
much.
Support for First Coast Connect is provided by Baptist Health and the North Florida TPO.
Baptist Health is a proud supporter of First Coast Connect. Baptist Health, committed to building a healthier community for all of us. More info at 202-4YOU or baptistjacks.com. The North Florida TPO is dedicated to transportation planning, funding, clean fuels, and new technologies for a vibrant, resilient, and connected region. More information available at northfloridatpo.com. Alchemy Yoga and Wellness, opening this summer in Ortega, offers a balanced approach to movement and recovery. Services include yoga, infrared sauna, cold plunge, massage, and facials in one location. More information at alchemyjax.yoga.